Please.
Good morning, Zach.
Howdy doody.
How's it going?
It goes. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about some media solutions on the show today. Although always a good topic. That's one that's your go-to knowledgeable topic. You even wrote a book about it, I hear. Not necessarily
Allegedly.
Media solutions, but the branding aspect.
Allegedly. I wrote the first draft.
Listen to your pod with was it last Friday you were on? With
Greg Tomczyk?
With Greg.
Yeah, that was good.
I enjoyed that.
It was good connecting with him again. Former guest on the show.
Yeah.
Doing some interesting things. Continuing
Always nice to cross promote, work together.
It's interestingly, there was a huge cyber attack with MGM where someone hacked into that entire system, and he was telling me about this and how it happened. Yeah. All it took was I don't know if we talked about this on the show, but it was just how simple this was. The hacker went into an employee's LinkedIn account, somehow connected with them, asked them for a password on something. The person gave it to them, and then they hacked the entire damn system. And if you had a hotel room in Vegas, I think it wasn't just in Vegas, I think it was other places too. I could be wrong, but there was like the hotel rooms, all the slot machines. Like you couldn't get into anything. The website's down. Like, oh my goodness! Like, just from like a simple craziness of, hey, I contacted this person and they were gullible, I guess.
Wow.
I mean, these emails are pretty good these days. Like, you gotta be really careful. Like now they're texting, like you got to look at that. Like it's actually quite scary how it used to be, the prince in Africa asking for $1,500 and that was the joking thing.
Right.
These people are a lot more sophisticated now. And if you're like not on your A game looking, you get pretty screwed pretty quick. I mean, I remember Garmin, has the Apple Watch ever gone down? Because remember there was a Garmin watch thing in one of
Garmin paid the ransom, right?
Oh, like $10 million, I think.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Simon, when you're doing stuff, media solutions, website stuff, do you worry about things from like a cyber attacks with your clients? Like, is there anything around that?
Well, the team we have, they're pretty sophisticated. They're pretty good with the security, making sure everything is tight. From my end, we protect our clients' confidentiality. So, there's some information that I'm the only one that's privy to, and I keep that kind of locked away. And then there's other bits of information, depending on how sensitive it is, that other people have access to. But yeah, we're very aware of it. So, but yeah,
scary stuff. I mean,
it really is. Because we'll have from time to time we'll have people contact me, hey, for work that we may have done together, asking if we have their website or their password stuff. It's like, dude, we don't store passwords, especially clients' passwords. That's just it's not the game we get into. That'd have been a big mess.
Yeah, it's just scary to think about. The future of the internet and where we are, and like what that could look like. Openly 15, 20 years ago, you never would have thought of like posting your life on the internet. Now that's, what people do. And like, it's just,
right.
It's wild to think about, 1984 when I was born and how, who knows what was going on then. Now, 39, 40 years later, it's a wild ride. It's a circus out there.
Yeah. I think AI is going to make it, even more challenging. But I hear of, scams where people call just to get you to say something, and then they record you saying yes to something, and they can use that recording to get you to authorize things that you didn't really authorize. But I think though over time, people are going to start to see and be able to tell that's AI. I think there's just something about it that we can kind of tell that's AI. But just like you said, like the when the African prince, asked for your bank account information, you could see that coming a mile away. But
yeah,
I think we're going to get used to it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just surprised now. Some of the different platforms that I sign up for, that there's no password at all. They just use two-factor authentication through email, and they just send you the temporary 6-digit PIN.
Isn't StreamYard
to put in
what we're using for this? Don't they do that?
Yeah, I think that's another one. Yeah.
So is that safer than a password? What is the thought behind that? Because I don't get it.
I guess I could maybe spreading the risk and say, if your email password is locked down and encrypted and all that kind of good stuff, that instead of having multiple passwords that people are storing across different things, it's best just to leverage the one password and most protected, as what I would assume. But it's just interesting that that's where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, as on my end, I typically deal with people on the branding and the marketing side of things, and I just kind of delegate a lot of the heavy. I'm concerned with the look and the messaging, and I just delegate the security and all that a lot of the technical stuff to people who know what they're doing. So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I tell you, with the branding side, I dabbled today with ChatGPT 4 because Canva's got their plugin.
Yeah.
And so I started messing around with that, and man, I was really, really underwhelmed, really disappointed. Granted, it's only going to improve with time, but
what did they release?
Yeah. Well, so if you use ChatGPT 4, which is the paid version, then you can go to their plugin store, and then you can one of the plugins is Canva, and so then when you put into the prompt, I make me a template for such and such event, and then it will come back and it will give you different things to look at, and then if you click on it, then it will take you to your Canva account where you can then edit that graphic. So like on the periphery, like the initial thing, that sounds really, really awesome. But gosh, I was really unimpressed and underwhelmed with the initial things that they suggested. But again, I mean, that's this early release that I suspect. It's just going to get better and better and better with time.
That's why my man Simon Matthews is excited to be in business, because he doesn't have to compete against those guys at ChatGPT 4, Canva yet.
But at the same time, and I'm curious your take, Simon. It's just if you find something and you look, and as it improves, if you can start off on second base, first base or second base, and then it's just tweaking things, then that's generally a good thing, I would think.
Yeah. So I mean, like for instance, I've used I recently got into using ChatGPT, kind of integrating it into our workflow, and we did some with one of my clients. We did some leadership interviews, and so I took the transcript from that interview. I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, write a blog for me based off of this interview, and it gave me a really good structured format. But even then, I still took about 2 hours to edit it and make it my own. So. Yeah. So I can see that we're looking at it, we're looking at it in terms of how does it speed up our own workflow. We're not looking at it in terms of how does it replace us, but right. Whatever gains it gives us, we kind of take that and use it to push what we were going to deliver anyway. We use it to push it a little bit further. So that's kind of how we look at it.
Where are you right now?
I'm actually at Regent. I'm in the it's called the Executive Study Suite. No, yeah, I think that's what it's called. So I'm a doctorate student. I'm also getting my doctorate degree here, so they give me access to my own office on campus. Yeah.
Is that on the first floor?
This is on the second floor.
Okay, so let's say that there's an elevator, right? You got 10, 15, 30 seconds to get to that second floor. You get into the elevator. What's the open door elevator pitch, if you will?
Oh, the open door elevator pitch. So basically, what my company is I help business owners with their marketing strategies, and so I also help them understand their brand identity. And then after we figure out the brand identity and then come up with strategies, then we actually help with we carry out the execution of those strategies. So we have a creative team. We've got animators, we've got game developers, programmers, copywriters, and we all just kind of work together to make creative assets that are very unique, very tailored to that company's brand, and then and then we just go from there.
So last week, if Tim recalls, Marwan from Greenlight Auctions, developer focused, I would say, he admitted how important he learned.
How could I forget, Zach? You made sure that nobody was going to forget.
I know. I just, Simon, I'm sure you get this. A lot of people will be like, how important is marketing in a business, right? How important is it really getting that brand out there? How important is it to have awareness for all these things? And I think a lot of people, it does, even marketers sometimes too, will sit there and say, it's just going to somehow sell itself. It's going to be great. I'm just going to do this thing and I'm just going to post it on YouTube. I'm just going to social media. I'm going to do this. And it's going to magically become, I'm going to put it on the App Store. That was my favorite one a decade ago. I'm just going to put it on the App Store and it's going to be the next thing, the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
Typically does not happen. So I think the title of this episode was like, does your business need to be marketed?
Right.
If someone asked you that, if you're at an event, you're speaking, and someone says, "Yeah, but does my business really need to be marketed?" What's your response to that?
The answer is yes, because business happens between people, right? It's almost like if I have something of value, but I'm not telling anybody that what I have. Marketing is communicating what you have of value, and you want that to lead to some form of business transaction. But if you don't communicate it and you don't make it known, and you don't communicate it enough so that it's at the top of people's mind, then you might have something really fantastic, but does it turn into an actual transaction or an actual business opportunity? So so yeah, you have to, it's almost like that saying, if you build it, they will come, and sometimes that, but even in situations like, if you build it, they will come, the message is getting out there. And so, but the I like to think about marketing in terms of there's many different forms of marketing. You can market it by word of mouth. You can market it by trying to promote it on social media. You can market it by sending out brand ambassadors to sing your praise. But the bottom line is that sales follows marketing. And so if you've got an issue with sales where no one's coming to you, it's probably because you are not putting the word out there about what you're doing. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you. It's and I tell folks all the time, especially early stage founders, that if you're not tired of telling your story, then you haven't told it enough. And it's exhausting. And it's so easy from you hearing yourself all the time. You get tired of it really, really quickly. But even that, it is still not enough. It's really, it's difficult.
Tim, let me piggyback off that real quick. So someone asked me how recently, how were you able to get all these people to your events back in the day? And I said, well, I mean, I can show you our checklist of things. And they literally were like, oh,
it's a lot of work.
And I was like, yeah, we don't just get this many, I think the most we ever had an event was 500 people, maybe, right? Something like that. And people were like, well, how did you do that? I'm like, here's the list of 300 things that we had to do. And some of those things, it's of those 300, it was really difficult things. And it's just yeah, that's how, we were very focused on doing a lot of things really well and getting people that you got to do a lot of things. And I think people
You've got to grind.
I don't think people appreciate, respect. They just like, I think it's easy. I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to use it. Like they'd be like jealous of some of the things and they just like be mad. Like, well, how is this person doing this? And I'm just like, yeah, but I'm clearly doing 50,000 times more than you are.
Right.
Not one thing. And that's why. And like, you just gotta think of it that way. It's not a, I wasn't trying to be mean to them, but it's just like, just what you got to do. Like you put on a lot of events, like you got to do it. You want people to see who you are.
I mean, it's so easy. I mean, like a couple days ago, I was lucky enough to go to the Foo Fighters show. I mean, that sold out in less than a minute.
It did.
And like everybody talks about the fact that they sold out in less than a minute, but it's like, gosh, they've been grinding for 27 years. I mean, it's just like,
so,
and then once you get to the top, you have to work like crazy to stay there.
Harder to stay than to get. People don't appreciate that. It is way harder to stay there than to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I got an interesting story. I worked with this organization that's been in existence for about 48 years, right? And their attendance, I mean, they would fill up events and have about 1,000 people in attendance. But I think in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, they're just their attendance has been dwindling down and down and down. And so I came on board to help them with their marketing. And one of the things that I saw was they really did not want to invest in digital marketing. They said, oh, well, we put an ad out in the paper and nothing came from it. And so they're kind of like traumatized by the investment that they made that didn't work out. But after I attended a few meetings and I started to see some of the personalities in the room. I started to see that there were your highly charismatic sales type of people who were responsible for the sales that they did get, the attention that they did get, but they didn't want to, how can I put it? The effectiveness of that group was kind of making it seem as if they didn't need marketers who were actually creating content and putting it out there. Okay. And so I had to make the case that you actually need both. You need someone who is creating content that is interesting and making people aware of it. And you also need like boots on the ground people who are actually making those personal, hitting those personal touch points, okay, to actually get people to show up. But usually it's the combination of what you're investing in marketing wise. So it's never, so if I'm promoting an event, I never just rely on what I'm doing on social media. You do social media, plus you send out text messages, plus you actually touch people, because and it's really the combination of that you'll start to see real results. And but sometimes it's the mix. It's like radio plus social media, or radio, a billboard plus an email marketing campaign. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, you think about someone like how many people do you think Taylor Swift has on her team for marketing? I mean, it's just these people, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift. I mean, any one person, they probably have a team. I couldn't even begin to guess. Probably 2 dozen people.
Yeah.
Making content, making graphics, doing whatever. It's just a machine.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, my man DJ behind me, The Rock, returned to WWE last Friday night.
I was going to send you something about what, like 150 million views.
Crap ton.
Yeah.
in 24 hours, right?
Wow.
But he has the WWE engine that obviously is going to promote that, but he also has his engine that is going to promote that and stuff like that. It's just like, this doesn't just happen, right? Like there is a trickle effect. That number isn't just one account. That was a series of accounts too. But like, I was going to add into that, just like your ESPNs of the world. And I know I've said this before to you, Tim. It's just like, look how hard it is. Look how much ESPN invests into trying to get people to watch one game a week. If they're doing that and they're the juggernaut, that shows me that they have to still remind people a series of times a plethora of times that, hey, like, we want you to watch this thing. This is the game of the week. We're going to invest in that thing.
Even if it's not even the Games Act, just think about how much how much went into making the NFL draft something sexy and watchable. I mean, like 10 years ago, that was just you never even knew that it happened.
A weekend stupid thing. Obviously important for those kids, but yeah, they've what, 5 years ago, 10 years, whenever they started doing it in non-New York City, they made a huge event. But
how many months did they start
for them to do that?
Right. And how long before the actual draft itself do they start marketing the draft? I mean, it's months ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's
they're already doing it. It's in Detroit this year. They're already doing it right now. It's 9 months from now. It's after football season. And so, like, people don't get that, right? It's just like, look at the biggest brands that they're doing it. So if they're doing it, you should probably doing it. Simon's just laughing here. Like, yeah, like these are the conversations I have with people. It's just like, yeah, it's like, guys, it's important.
What I mean, what you're doing is, I don't want to say this, but it's almost like you turn on your hypnotic ray, right? Your machine to kind of start hypnotizing people as early as possible and conditioning them to kind of when it comes time to make that decision, they can't help but think about you. And so it's all I think about the Geico Gecko, right? He sells, they're selling a very unsexy product. Nobody's up talking about insurance, right? Mm-hmm. But and if you notice, their commercials aren't really talking about insurance. They're talking about something that's going to make you laugh. But what they're doing is they're kind of keeping you entertained so that when you get in an accident, and now you're thinking about insurance, because you don't think about insurance unless you just got into a fender bender. You think about that stupid gecko. You see what I mean? And that's the strategy behind it.
Even before we went live here today, before we were talking about the naming of the storms, as there's something passing through. I mean, like, that was just a brilliant move. You name these storms, and now you get sucked into it, just as you were saying, Simon. You feel compelled to have to tune into the Weather Channel to find out what Hurricane Lee or whatever storm of the day or week is. Watching the track to see what's going on, and like Jim Cantor or whatever. When everyone taking pictures of him in the airports, knowing wherever he's going, it's about to go down. I mean, it's just you get sucked into it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like I tell my clients, when they're trying to come up with their brand, a lot of times when they new customers, they come in and they try to emulate what other people are doing. And I think that's there's some value in taking note to what successful people are doing. But at the end of the day, you're different from them. And so you actually have to kind of decide, what is it that you want people to associate with your brand? Okay. So for instance, my company, we do animation. We create animation. And if I wanted a brand where I wanted people to, every time they thought about making an animated explainer video, I want them to think about Simon, or I want them to think about Open Door Media Solutions. So I have to intentionally, in all of my communications, figure out how do I create that association. And you take a company like an organization like Walmart, right? When you think about low cost groceries, that's Walmart's going to pop up in most people's heads. Or if I ask you, hey, when I say low cost fast food, 9 times out of 10, the same company crops up in people's heads.
Because you better say the Golden Arches.
Exactly.
That's right.
Because that's my point. And so what it shows is that they have such a so they're not only known as a low cost fast food company, but they have such a strong association with that word. So it's almost like measuring how strong is that. Like, there are plenty of other low cost fast food places, but that one surfaced so quickly, and that is a testament to how strong that particular descriptor is tied and linked to the Golden Arches. And so businesses need to understand, how is it that, like, for instance, with my company, I want my company to be known for that we're an ambitious company. We pay attention to detail. We're a company, we value faith. Okay. What is it? We value diversity of perspective. So I've got maybe just a list of about 5 associations that I want people to associate with my company. So everything that I'm doing needs to kind of support those associations. So if I want people to think that if I want to be known for the guy who pays close attention to detail, in every one of my communications, I'm going to really be kind of quality controlling it and checking it for accuracy. Now, I might be a company that doesn't care as much about details, right? And that's perfectly fine, right? Because that could be your brand. But and if you're that kind of company, you can certainly create content a lot faster than a company like me, who if I'm really, really a stickler for details, it means I'm going to hold on to content a lot longer before I release it. But that's just the nature.
Are we talking pixel level detail or just the tweaking words or different shapes, colors?
Oh, there are so many different layers of detail that I agonize over. I wouldn't say agonize over, but that I consider. And so, of course, grammar, of course, the tone of voice, my audience, just the composition of the graphics. So, and this is the interesting thing is if I get something from AI, even though it's perfect, I said, no, it's not quite right. I need to bring this, I need to bring this into conformity to what I needed to be.
Simon open door DNA needs to be within that product.
It's got to pass through multiple filters before I'm ready to put it out. And so it's like a full-time job. But some of my clients, they really appreciate it. Well, I think pretty much all of my clients appreciate that level of detail. So
from a branding perspective, what would you say to, let's say, an internet company whose customers' internet goes out every Thursday, sometime between the times of 11 and 12, on no matter what, goes out, no rhyme or reason. How would you say that they handle a situation like that? Because you see a lot of people on the internet are negative from a consumer perspective, from a customer perspective, from a branding perspective, from the actual business that has something negative that happens to their customer, and something as simple as losing internet for a couple of moments. How would you respond to that? What would be the thing that you say to them?
So my advice would kind of be different based on where that organization is. So if you have a monopoly, then you can kind of and there's not a lot of there's no competition nipping at your heels. My advice would be slightly different, but in general, and I think this applies for every company. You have a relationship with your clients, and things that you do or things that you don't do when you don't live up to people's expectations, that can wear on the relationship. And if you are a monopoly, then and people don't have much choice, then they tend to move a little slower to repair any damage caused, and at that point it's just a matter of they're looking at what can they get away with, right? But I think the right thing to do is just to kind of number one, fix the problem, and I don't know, maybe offer a discount or some kind of do something. Just like if I was to show up late for a meeting as one of my buddies, right? I have a friend, he was late like 45 minutes late for a meeting. And I was boiling mad at him, but he kind of went, he went and he's like, he figured out a way to make it up to me. So he I forget how he did it, but again, it's relationship. You know,
you gave
our
someone
businesses,
45 minutes though. That's
oh,
aggressive.
well, I've known him for over 13 years. So, but if he was just if he was you know, but I've extended some grace to him. But my point being is that, you know, a business has a relationship with its clients. And just like any other relationship, you know, if you want to have a good relationship with your wife, there's certain things you got to do to keep it strong. And so, and that's the same way with a company and its consumers. I think for these really massive companies, B2C organizations, it's difficult take for instance, Apple to have a real genuine relationship with its consumers, or Verizon to have a genuine relationship with its consumers. So mistakes have a greater impact. But if you're a smaller company, right, and your thing is you're big in terms of customer service and personal relationship, then I think it's easier for small businesses to try to like mend those fences. But when you're a huge business and those transactions are really just transactional, they're not relational. I think there's not a lot of grace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so here's adding on to that, and Andrew, we can clip this and we can use this later. But so last week I was listening to This Week in Startups, as I always do every single morning. It's just part of my morning thing. And they that particular episode I was listening to, they had Scott Tannen on. He's the founder and CEO of Boll and Branch, the bed sheets. And he went. It was really enlightening. I mean, I don't know anything about bed sheets. I've heard the term thread count. Doesn't really mean a whole lot to me, but it was
Egyptian cotton.
Well, you know, and I learned that like the average age, the average life expectancy for a cotton farmer in India was 36 or 37 years old, and that's primarily because they're carrying backpacks, and then with the chemicals and pesticides and everything they use on the cotton, yeah, that obviously greatly reduces the life expectancy of these farmers. So like they're they're big into organic and doing all the right things. And I was like, wow, I came back home and I told my wife about it. And, you know, then I put something on, posted to X when This Week in Startups talked about the episode. And I was like, gosh, now I'm gonna need a promo code because now I'm gonna have to invest in these sheets. And sure enough, Scott slid into the DMs, you know, and he was like, "Hey, thanks for listening. Here's a promo code for you to use." Gave me a promo code, and now last night I had my first night in my Boll and Branch sheets, and dude, it was like I was on a vacation. Sheets were like. Chef's kiss. Great sheets. Everything was awesome. It was good stuff. So now, you know, there's a customer for life.
Okay. So I'm interested in how do they get around the 37-year-old death rate of that? Where are they not making them in cotton fields now? Like what's the...
No, they are. So like so what they're doing now is they're like, hey, we want to source all of our cotton from all of these particular farmers in India. In order for you, and so if we're going to buy all of your cotton, here are the things that you need to abide by: no chemicals, no pesticides, fair labor and wages, all fair trade things that you have to abide by. And then for them, for the farmers, it's great because it's guaranteed revenue. From a business sense, it makes sense.
How much were the sheets?
I mean, they're a few $100 for some sheets, but you know the quality of cotton is gets softer with each wash, is what they say. And so I learned a lot about sheets. Maybe that's part of the aging process. I don't know.
Tim Ryan.
Boll and Branch. And you see some of the commercials on TV or whatever, but I underestimated the benefits of quality sheets. So it was a.
How do you take that, what they just told you, and prove it, right? Because I think there's a lot of people, and either of you can jump on this, but like people will kind of like be deceiving, where they're like, yeah, it's this.
And so, and he talked about that on the show, and he said that now on the tag of your sheets, they're either getting ready to launch it or just launched this. There's a special. No, you can look at the number on the sheets, and then you can trace that back to exactly what farm that the cotton came from. And so, like they're all in on the fair trade aspect.
Because the first time I actually saw that in action was when I watched Super Size Me 2, where Morgan Spurlock is trying to open a fast food joint, and he's like, "Here, I'm going to show you guys how to get all these labels, choice, USDA, farm raised, things like that." And he's like, "This is how easy it is to get that stuff." And you see it, and you see like for like the chickens, all he had to do was take the exact same. I'm just going to call it barn, open the door up a little bit, put a fence on it, and have that fence be out 1 foot, put a little fence around that, and that meant farm raised or something like that. He's like, that's all you had to do. And so it's like, technically, yes, it's that, but it's not in that case. And he was trying to just articulate that, hey, like this is a very corrupt industry. And so that's where I was going with the sheets aspect of it. And so we're misled a lot, and that's.
And the thing is, man, like I can't remember. I don't know how many years I was in Germany. I was in Germany long time ago when I was in the Air Force. And like part of when you're out in the village, that was one of the things that all the restaurants would do. I was right on the front window. They would have like a list where all of the hogs or the pigs came from. So when you got your schnitzel, you knew exactly where they sourced all of that pork from, so that you can go and you could see. If you want to drive by that farm and see how they're raised, pretty interesting stuff.
I think it's hilarious. Like you can go to the supermarket and you see something like pickles, and it'll be this big label, gluten free, right? It's like, why would pickles have gluten in them? And I think from a business point of view. I think businesses can educate people on how to sniff out kind of fakes or phonies, if you have the budget to do that, But a lot of small businesses don't. I mean, there's a lot of different tactics you can use to kind of reveal people who are using deceptive marketing to kind of take advantage of like certain diets, like, oh, this is gluten, or this is, and they're just making stuff up. But if I'm a competitor of that company making it up, I was just I don't have to necessarily call them out. I can just run a campaign that's educating people on, hey, these are some things to look out for.
Jumping on a bandwagon with the pickles and gluten. I didn't know that they didn't have gluten in them. Who knows? I mean,
I think gluten has to do with bread, right? I don't.
Right. I'm sure they're trying to jump on.
With
they're
meat.
Jumping on that thing. I guess maybe.
I think you got gluten-free bacon. I mean, you'll go in there, you'll see bacon or something, gluten-free bacon. It's like, okay, that's kind of silly.
It is silly when you think about it.
Yeah.
It all takes a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, all that to say, the last 10 minutes that we've been talking, it takes a lot of work, and from the big companies to the small companies, especially, it all adds up. I mean, it just, even going back to the Bull and Branch thing. I mean, he's a busy guy. He's the CEO. He's probably got a bazillion things. And was he the person that created the promo code for me? No, but that little 5 minutes of work that it took, the lifetime value now that he was able to turn that into is really significant. And that's what new small business, new founders of businesses need to think about, is that lifetime value. And what are you doing? How are you branding yourself as a company to establish that lifetime value?
Yeah.
How frequently do you change your sheets?
In between, like when you're talking like outside of washing?
How often are you changing your sheets? Because
Well,
there's a big
he
debate in
said that.
this.
Yeah, those the Bull and Branch sheets, they said would last 100 washes or more. He said that that you will get bored of your sheets before they will wear out.
But you change your sheets every week, every month, every 2 weeks. How often are you?
I am very, very fortunate to have a wonderful wife that handles all of it.
So you don't know when it happens? You don't know the frequency?
It's just magic. It's magic.
Oh,
how about you?
Oh, well, a long time ago. It was a long time.
It's scary. Here we are. We're talking about we got to get Andrew on the show. Yeah, coming from the college times. Like once a semester.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It was that ridiculous. Yeah. I would say 3 weeks is probably my frequency at this point. Maybe 2. It's a more frequent now than ever before. And I think there's a lot of data that kind of enforces why you should do that on a more frequent thing. They didn't talk about that for on This Week in Startups, like how often people are changing their sheets.
No.
I think about 1 week is about the goal.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I just hate changing the damn sheets, getting around those corners. Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. Deep pockets, man. You have to have the deep pockets to makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
I see Simon, Andrew in the background has said 18 weeks. He changes the sheet every 18 weeks.
Simon, what are you pursuing your PhD in?
So it's not a PhD. It's called a Doctorate in Strategic Leadership, and I mean that's what it is. It's understanding leadership, and I recently got my MBA. I wouldn't say recently. It was last summer. I got my MBA with a concentration in marketing, and then I kind of felt like there's still more that I need to know. And so I went and to do the leadership studies. So I kind of like to kind of describe the difference of the MBA helps you understand how business functions, right? But then the leadership part actually helps you understand how people function, because you can understand how a business operates. You can understand how your payroll department and your accounting and all that stuff works, but how do you actually get people to show up to work for you? How do you get people to be good employees for you? That has nothing to do with whether you have an MBA or not. That has to do with how good of a person are you? How good of a leader are you?
It's really almost come to the point now, ever since COVID happened, that it's just easier to be lazy and say that, oh, we can't meet your expectations because of labor shortages, as opposed to digging deep within your leadership of the organization and you stepping up and creating a place where people want to work.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's, you take, for instance, you've got some leaders who are such great leaders, they can motivate you to die for them. And then you got other leaders who they can't even motivate you to get out of bed in the morning. And so it's like, when you figure that piece out, how essential is that to growing your business, you see? And as it relates to marketing, a lot of times I'll help people define their brand, and it really doesn't match who they are, right? So that's kind of why I decided I wanted to do the leadership studies, because when I do work with clients, I want to understand who they are, so that I'm not creating this fictitious entity, but that the brand I'm developing, it actually has its basis in who the leadership is.
So is it safe to say that not every client that wants to work with you, you're willing to work with?
Yeah, that's true. I think in my beginning years, when I started this business like 7 years ago. I would take anybody.
Sure. I think that that's
I
the
would,
case for everyone.
yeah, I would take anybody. Uh, but now I'm a lot more picky, and thankfully, my communications. I hope that I'm not communicating in such a way that I attract the wrong kind of people. I think that if I'm communicating my brand identity correctly, then I'm not going to get. I think just by me doing that alone, it would deter the wrong type of clients for me. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense, especially when you look at it like when Zach and I are working with founders and we're talking about market segmentation and what side of the market are you going to go after. That, part of it is who are you, who is the right fit from the marketing standpoint, but the other side goes to you from the leadership side of, if you're going to be recommending different strategies to implement from a marketing and branding standpoint, they have to have the leadership chops and understanding and the ability to execute what you're trying to tell them to do in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a huge thing. I work with I've worked with salespeople, and it's funny. So I've got an operations background. So I spent 11 years in the engineering and manufacturing industry, and I was an operations manager. So I worked for a company that was in New York City, and they came to Baltimore. My job was to just get the job done, just to execute. So I have a real appreciation for coming up with a strategy and actually executing it. Now, when I talk with clients, a lot of times they'll live in this kind of aspirational space, like this is who they want to be, but it's a huge difference in who you want to be versus who you are right now. And I think a good marketer can kind of help them differentiate from their aspirational self versus their self right now, and to understand how to kind of balance that communication. And so I think from my operations background, I'm listening for, okay, how are we going to get this done? Like, I know that you want to be the biggest company on the East Coast, okay? But do you have the money to pay me and my team to drop everything to work exclusively for you? And most of the time, the answer is no. Okay, so it's like, okay, so let's reel back this, I appreciate your vision, but now let's look at what we actually have to work with.
Well, and I think even on that note, do you understand how big you really want to get? Do you understand the ramifications of that? Like when it's you and just a couple of people, that might be comfortable, right? That might, and not even comfortable in a bad way. Like, just might be like, okay, this is a good size of business for me, right?
Right.
You double that or a couple of times double it, and it's too overwhelming, and they're not willing to deal with that. Like, that's something that I think is often overlooked, not only from the person starting the business, but even people who are associated with entrepreneurial organizations that are like, oh, you can be this big thing. It's like, yeah, like, I don't know that I want to handle 20, 200, 2,000 people. Like, I just want to do this thing. And I think that's where people maybe burn out, feel the loss of the business. Like, it's not even if it's 100% theirs, like, it's not anymore, because they can't be doing the things that they want to. And I think that's maybe some soul searching with themselves, being like, okay, like, how big do I really want to see this thing? And it's like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, I only want to see this double one more time. And it's not that much bigger to do that number. And I was like, look, I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people would be encouraged to, 20x something. That's like, what does that mean for you if you 20x that thing? Are you willing? Like, imagine, Tim, whatever, like, something that you're doing, you had to 20x that. It's like, well, maybe that means you can't run in the morning. What would that do to your psyche?
Right.
What would that do to the mental aspect? What would that do to the family aspect? And I just think people maybe underappreciate and don't even think about that at any time in the business.
It's so funny because the guy I worked for a long time ago in Baltimore, at the time I worked for him, the factory was 16,000 square feet. And then, and that was 13 years ago. And so I worked there, and, once I took ownership of the operations, I got the company profitable. But anyway, since then I left, and so I still keep in contact with him. That I went back to the factory to visit, and they're now 70,000 square feet. Okay, he bought a 100,000 square feet factory, I think, in Indiana, a second 100,000 square feet factory in Michigan, and then he bought another factory in Texas that has been around for 125 years, right? And so I'm like, I mean, way back when I was working for him, he was one of these super driven people. I mean, it's like this guy didn't sleep, right? He would wake up and say, I'm gonna shake hands with the president, and then he was, on the newspaper shaking hands with the president, right? He's an incredibly driven person. I'm like, why are you doing this? When is enough enough? And he's like, for him, there's just doesn't really seem to be an end to how much he wants to expand. And it was even when I was working for him, it was a lot of work keeping up with a person like that. But he paid really well, right? Money was never an issue. It was, can you get the job done? And, we could never say that he didn't give us enough resources. Money wasn't an issue. But, people like that are very rare. And I think you have to understand what kind of a person are you. Like when he says he wants to be number one in the industry, I believe him, 100% believe him, right? But most business owners, they kind of say, well, I'm supposed to say I want to be number one, right? So I'm just going to say I'm going to be number one. But it's like, the reality is, are you actually able to put in the work and stress yourself to be number one? Like, let's be real. Are you happy with being number 5?
Well, and Zach and I talk about this all the time on the show, in the sense of, like, in some aspects, Shark Tank was great because it brought entrepreneurship on the map, and there was a spotlight on it that it had never been before. But at the same time, and then the whole branding of, oh, you need to be the next unicorn, you need to be raising money, you need to be doing this and doing that, and then everybody just felt like that's what they needed to do. Whereas, like, you need to look at yourself in the mirror right away, and it's like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with a lifestyle business. I can make a couple $100,000 a year as a business, and I'm able to put my kids on the bus in the morning, see them get off the bus in the afternoon, go to all their events. That's totally okay. Yeah, but you have to decide that for yourself. You can't let someone else make that determination for you.
And the important thing is that it's really like, why did you start this business? And if you're trying to be number one, and you're in a highly competitive environment, there's not a lot of your profits. There's not a lot of profit there because there's so many competitors. The amount of profit is not really, there's not a ton of profit margin in industries that are highly competitive. So people who are in those spaces, they have to be, in order to survive, you have to love what you're doing, right? And so there's a ton of sacrifice. And so, but the fact is that if you really are just trying to start your business so that you can have some independence, so that you don't have to punch a clock, and so that you can build up some wealth, just kind of, figure out where you really fit. Like, not everybody's going to be a heavyweight. You might be a lightweight. And the sooner you realize the sooner you're honest with yourself and you realize what kind of fights you should be getting into, I think the happier you're going to be. And I think my mistake when I first, I don't know if it was a mistake. But when I first started my business, I was going after, any challenge I could get my hands on, I was going after it. Then I started to kind of get burnt out. And then I started to say to myself, I don't need to pursue every opportunity. I can let some opportunities just kind of keep going. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, it's more important that, I'm healthy, more important that my wife is happy, more important that my team isn't overstressed. And so, but I don't think that you just wake up and know who that person is. I think you have to kind of get out there and try and try and try. And then you kind of, you kind of learn, what kind of battles you want to get into. Does that?
Yeah. How do you determine what battles you pick and choose? Did you just sum it up? Is it just really looking deep within yourself and looking at the mirror and saying, "Yep, this is what I want to go after. This is not."
I think for me, it was multiple. I mean, there are some. I mean, I think I arrived at that answer a lot of different ways. But when I'm working with clients, I'll kind of tell them, what kind of business do you want to run? Do you want to run a safe, quiet business, right? And typically, safe, quiet businesses, they tend to be high in bureaucracy, right? Low in creativity. All right. It's not think about someone who sells paper, right? It's not a sexy business, right? Right. Dunder Mifflin, right? It's and on the other side of the spectrum, you got Apple, right? Who has to compete. They have to stay number one, So one end of the spectrum, the number ones, life kind of sucks in a way. I mean, but they love challenges. They love taking big risks. And on the other side, you got people who they don't really want to take huge risks. They just like predictability and stability. So the question is that what kind of person are you? Can you live for a long time in an unstable environment, right? Where it's not predictable. You have to constantly be on your A game. And it's really, what kind of risk do you want to take as a business owner? And if you're the type of business owner who wants to play it safe all the time, then, you're not going to be that number one. You see? Does that make sense? That's kind of it's like, what's your risk tolerance, right? What do you have the stomach for? Let's first decide on that. Now, people who are nickel and diming you and arguing over a couple $100, that's one sign that you're not really a number one kind of person, right? You're counting pennies and you really don't want to take a huge risk. But the guys who are just like, look, I know you can do the job. How much is it going to take to do it? How soon can you get started? Those are good signs that this is a person who really wants to be at the top of their industry.
I prefer the Michael Scott Paper Company, just FYI. I was sad to see that one go. It didn't last as long as it should have, but
Yeah.
Thank you for trying in those hard times, Michael Scott Paper Company.
So much of what we talked about is it all stems back to leadership and who you are as a perfect person and who you want to be as a leader. And I find it a really fascinating topic.
Yeah, it is. And it is. And I think when I talk to my clients, I'm looking at, I first start with, who are they, and I start with, what are your skills? What are you really good at? And when I'm developing their brand identity, it's not based off of what I'm not looking at the big boys and trying to make them emulate them. I'm looking at, what do they bring to the table? And then how do we kind of turn that into a brand? Your brand should just really be an extension of who you actually are.
100% agree. And gosh, this is something I could talk about a long, long time. I did not expect that we were going to be able to take this journey down the leadership road. So that's super cool. What What's something that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about?
Well, not this Friday, but Friday the 29th, I'm actually having doing a marketing strategy presentation at the Hive
Cool.
in Town Center. And so lunch is provided for free. And so I'll be helping business owners conceive of and develop strategies. We'll look at the different popular strategies that are out there. And then most importantly, I'll be helping them. I'll be giving them some insights on how do you actually execute them. Because, I did some research and found that, 50 to 90% of all strategies fail during the implementation phase.
It's all about execution.
And it's all about execution. So the actual implementation has a lot to do with leadership. And so that's what I'm going to be talking to people about. And if your listeners want to register, there's still time to register.
And we'll make sure that we get that link in the show notes. And when we push out the different clips throughout the week, we'll make sure that that's included in there as well.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, on behalf of Zack, I think that he is with us, but it's really been an enjoyable hour. Thank you for your time. It was super enlightening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good seeing you again, Zack.
You too. This isn't a recorded thing. I came back. The internet came back. I only lost 3 times today. That's a world record. Thank you to my internet provider, who I will not say who they are out loud. Good seeing you, Simon. Peace.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
So long, everyone.